Hello everyone, welcome back to MGM. I'm Jimmy. Today we're going to be painting some Razorbacks from Ravaged Star. Now, as you're probably well aware, Ravaged Star is a miniatures game that is coming down the line by miniwargaming. They just finished their first wave of a Kickstarter, and it looks like that those units are going to be looking to ship either later this year or first of next year. The models are fantastic, very detailed. They all come in one piece. The final models will be made out of a hard PVC style plastic. And we're going to paint up some Razorbacks today, and this is going to apply to the majority of the army that I'm going to paint. Speed paint, contrast paint, express paint, whatever you use, it will be your friend here, as there's a lot of crevices that we want to get the paint into. For the skin areas that are showing, I wanted kind of this darker purple type color, but I didn't want it to be super purple. I wanted it to be a little lighter, if you will. So what I did is I took 1 drop of Speed Paint Purple Alchemy and 4 drops of Speed Paint Bony Matter, and I mixed that together with 1 drop of Speed Paint Medium. This isn't going to be the final color, but it's going to be an excellent base to highlight up from in some future steps. There's going to be a few areas of skin that you're going to want to get here. The face, obviously. There's going to be some showing around the hands or feet, whatever you want to call these things. And you don't have to be really neat here, because we're going to go back with several other speed paints and layers, and it will cover over this one nicely. So for now, I'm just going across getting what I think will look good as this color. It should be noted that I started with a very light prime. I used a Vallejo gray primer through an airbrush, and then topped it with just a little bit of white. You could obviously use a rattle can if you're in the Citadel range. The Wraithbone spray would probably work really well here. So you've seen me paint one side of the model. I will get his tail, and then we will paint the other side and move on to the next step. And in the next step, I do have a few paints that I have used in my scheme to get their armor or their shells, whatever you want to call that. The example that we're going to use today is Speed Paint Fire Giant Orange. I did do some of the shells in Hive Dweller Purple, and I also did some in Sand Golem for some of the smaller creatures that I've painted. Once again, you'll see the capillary action, I guess is what it's called, as the speed paint really goes in, rolls off the brush, and just fills in all of these nooks and crannies, creating some shade for us. The reason that I am so high on speed paints, especially for these types of applications, is because it tends to give us the base layer and the wash all in the same step. If you're using just standard acrylics here, you would have to go over this with a fairly watered down paint, and you would probably have to do multiple layers of it. The speed paint is a single coat solution. I get these armor areas around his arms, and you want to be sure that you tilt the model kind of upside down to be sure that you get the bottom sides of his shell area as well. There's also going to be some armor around his leg area, as well on some of these other arms that he has as well. There's a lot of bugs to paint in this set, so speed is your friend here, and that is certainly another reason why I am moving to these speed paints for the job. Okay, I would consider this next step to be optional. I am going to grab some matte white from the Army Painter and go over some of these horns that are showing, and any area where you may have spilled over that you want to be a bone type of color. This is where you're going to kind of whiten that up a little bit. I went over these kind of sloppily, but I just knew that I was going to go over this with white and then put another speed paint on top of them. This step does not take long at all. You can see I just quickly work my way around getting some white on these, and then anywhere that I've spilled over, then I just bring that back to a white as well. Up next, I use Speed Paint Bony Matter, and I just go over the areas that I recently painted white. You can see some of these areas that were orange I went over with a single coat of white, and it actually gave them kind of a bone style of tint, and that's nice because we'll just go over it with this just to further accentuate that. Now there's going to be lots of horns and claws around this guy, so I'm going to get the ones that are coming out of his face here. There's also going to be some around his feet, as well as the razor claws that look like his main attacking weapon. Another good option here in that army painter range would be the pallid bone speed paint, but since we were already working with bony matter, I figured I would just go ahead and use it to lighten the load of the amount of paints that we need. Up next, we move to one of my hobby cheats, and that is Vallejo Iraqi sand. It's one of my favorite colors, and I use it for this application so much, but we're going to apply a dry brush where you wipe most of the paint off on a paper towel, and then go through and just give everything a solid once over. The skin I am going to push in a little heavier with because I really want that Iraqi sand to kind of be the color of the skin with some of that purple, showing underneath. So you'll see here when I'm getting the tail and underneath and on the legs, I'm doing a heavier dry brush because I really want to bring this color out on the skin. This color is also going to give us a great highlight on the orange. It's going to give it a little bit of a weathering kind of effect because you have to keep in mind that these guys are moving through the dirt and the muck and they're coming up from the ground. The good news in using this method and doing what we're doing in the order that we're doing it is if you mess up, if you put too much on, your speed paint is probably still sitting wet in your palette and you could easily go back in and get that original color back. And there we have some really quick, easy, and efficient highlights, and this will look exceptional on the purple ones. Up next, I'm going to go with Army Painter's Skeleton Bone. I'm just going to go through and give some really quick highlights to a lot of these bone areas. I really want them to pop out, and you could certainly leave these orange, and that is perfectly fine. I did want mine just to stand out a little bit more, so just quickly giving these a good once-over. I'll do these for the bones that are protruding from his mouth, the toes, any of the bone weapons that he has. It's just really going to make everything stand out a little bit more. I still had white on my palette, so I'm going to go through and dot the eyes here as we are going to use a speed paint, and that will look the best going over a white here. I'm also going to use the white to clean up a little bit of the base where I've spilled onto that. Another good part about these miniatures is I really don't have to worry about basing. The basing is all something that you can paint on these models, and I really like that. I did some testing with this, and I would actually consider this step optional. The speed paints that you're going to put on later will do a fine job covering up any of the orange or the other colors that you may have spilled on the bottom. Still, if you want to give these bubbles and the base a little bit of variation, just go and throw some white on there, as that is where the speed paint is really going to pop. Up next, I'm going to grab Speed Paint Blood Red. I'm going to go into the eyes here that we just painted white to get those. This is a reason that you don't have to be very neat when trying to dot these eyes in. It's almost going to have a glowing effect to them. I'm also going to use this paint to get the insides of his mouth and some areas around where he would be crunching on some organic bodies. For the base, I grab Speed Paint Clay Ochre and just go around and get the outsides, trying to avoid the little bubbles that are on the base, as those are going to be green. Again, I did find in testing this, if you happen to spill over, it really doesn't matter, as the green is going to go right on top of this and you would not be able to see it. I come back in with a Speed Paint Orc Skin. This is going to give us a nice green on some of these bubbles that are around the base. Not sure what these are, but I like them green. We are going to follow that up with some Citadel Tesseract Glow, and I'm just going to kind of bring this in on the top to really make it pop out a little bit. And with that, our Razorback is going to be complete. Be sure that you top this off with a matte varnish of your choice. Overall, I thought he came out pretty good. This model took about 30 minutes to do while I was on camera. If you would like to go through and give some highlights, the Army Painter Fanatics range Lava Orange is a really good match for this. For my guys in purple, I did use a Vallejo model color Blue Violet. I would consider this step optional, just if you wanted to add a little more pop to where light would be hitting your model, just feel free to go around and do this as necessary. And you can see the finished product with my two primary colors. These guys are ready to take the field and munch on whatever they can find. Hey, thank you so much for watching this painting video. A big thank you to the Supporters Club. Your names are on the screen now. That's something that is by no means necessary. If you've watched the video this far, you've done more than enough to support the channel, so thank you so much. You can see more of our hobby activities on our new website, miniaturegamemontage.com. We'll be following Ravaged Star very closely as it gets closer to launch, and we hope to provide some battle reports in the near future. Thanks again, and we'll catch you in the next one. Take care.